الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام الطهور شطر الإيمان وقال الله عز وجل في شأن حبيبه صلى الله عليه وسلم مخبرا وآمرا إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم عليه الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رحمة للعالمين وعلى آلك وأصحابك وسلم عليك يا شفيع المذنبين. All praise of Allah, the Lord of all the universes, and peace, blessing, salutations be upon His beloved, the best of creation, the best of all messengers, the beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through whose wasila and through whose blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us our deen and gave us our way of life and our way of how to receive the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the ability to stay steadfast upon the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and stay in accordance with the teaching of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'at. Continuing from last week's lesson where we finished the first part in relation to purification, the water which we are allowed to use to purify ourselves and the different categories the water fall into, and then in relation to how to remove the impurity and what category water falls into after it has purified something else, and what is the remaining water, what is that called, what is that titled as, etc, etc. After completing that chapter, now we move on to the next chapter, which is the chapter of Wudu, the chapter of ablution. And that is the next chapter, the next fasal, which we will go into now. That what is the procedure that we have been taught from the Quran and the Sunnah in relation to how a person must perform his wudu to the most correct way possible in order for him to achieve the actual goals and the objectives of wudu. Mentioned here arkan al-wudu'i arba'atan wa hiya fara'iduhu, that the pillars of wudu, meaning the necessities of wudu, are four, and they are known as the fara'id. Fara'id meaning those actions which are compulsory in wudu. So there are four. So that's the first thing which needs to be noted, that there are four pillars of wudu, wa hiya fara'iduhu, and they are known as the fara'id. Fara'id is the plural for fard, which means something which is compulsory. So there are four compulsory actions in wudu that if any of these four were to be missed, then a person's wudu is incomplete. And by doing these four and by completing these four actions, at least a person's wudu has been done. At least it has been done. الأول غسل الوجه وحده طولا من المبدأ السطح الجبهة إلى الأسفل الذقن وحده عرض ما بين شحمة الأذنين. That the first part, the first compulsion in wudu is the washing of the face, the wudhul wajh. The washing of the face is the first fard of wudu, and washing the face is what? That where a person's hairline finishes, so where a person's hairline finishes and where his forehead begins from there to a person's chin, below his chin, and from earlobe to earlobe, that is regarded as the face. So from a person where his hairline finishes and where his face, that's where his face begins from, to his chin, from earlobe to earlobe, that is known as wajhun, wajh, a person's face that he must wash. That's the first part, the first fard of wudu. وَالثَّانِي غُسْلُ الْيَدَيْهِ مَعَ مِرْفَقَيْهِ. The second is the washing of the hands all the way up to and including the elbows. Washing the hands all the way up to and including the elbows. So meaning a hand begins from the longest finger, the tip of the longest finger, all the way to the top of the elbow. That is regarded as a hand. That's a person's hand which he must wash, which is the third compulsion act in Wudu. Then the next is غسل رجليه مع كعبيه, to wash the feet including the ankles. Number 3 is to, this is not the order by the way, we're not giving the order, we're just giving what the compulsory acts are according to how it's mentioned in this text here. But the third point mentioned here, which is compulsory in wudu, is washing the feet including the ankles. وَالرَّابِعْ مَسْحُ رُبْءِ رَأْسِهِ, and the next and fourth action which is compulsory in wudu is the washing of the head, masha of the head, at least 1/4. So 1/4 is the compulsory amount of the forehead which must be masha. The difference between ghusl, washing, and masha, ghusl means to wash, masha means just to put water on, like just to wipe. Masha means to wipe. So washing is something else, wiping is something else. So the masha is to wipe at least 1/4 of the head. And if 1/4 is done, then that is the fourth fard of wudu. Now this ayat of these four verses, these four fard of wudu, what was remember is when something is made fard, then it can only be regarded as fard when it is proven from the nusus sariha, the nasiqati of the Holy Quran, the clear explicit text of the Holy Quran. Only when something is proven from them, then that can be regarded as a fard. And indeed these four faraid of the Quran, of these wudu which we mentioned, are mentioned in a verse of the Holy Quran. And the reference is Surah Ma'idah, which is Surah 5, and verse number 6. So Surah Ma'idah, which is Surah 5, verse number 6, and in which I'll give you the translation so you can write that down as well. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe. O you who believe. So indeed straight away this now is referring to the believers. So meaning this compulsion only refers to believers. That will come on to next, that who is it obligatory upon to do wudu and what are the conditions for that. But to begin, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe. Idha kumtum ila salah. Kumtum bamana aratum. What it means here is that, O you who believe, when you intend to perform salah, when you intend to perform salah, faghsilu, wash. This is a amr. Faghsilu bamana amr. Faghsilu, wash. Wujuhakum, wash your faces. Wash your faces, O you who believe. Because it is referred to here as, in every point here is mentioned as jam'a, as a plural. Because why? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has begun the ayat, He said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Amanu again is referring to not one believer, but O you who believe. Ya ayyuha, so all believers. Not only referring to one believer, but it is referring to all believers, that whoever believes, idha kumtum, when you intend to perform salah, faghsilu, then you wash, wujuhakum, wash your faces. So wash your faces. So the first compulsion which are mentioned in the faraid of wudu, of washing the face, that's proven from this verse of the Holy Quran. This first word, faghsilu wujuhakum wa aydiyakum, and your hands. Aydiyakum is the jam'a of yad. Yad means a hand, and yaday means two hands, and here aydiyakum refers to hands as in a plural to all the believers, that your hands, wash your faces and wash your hands. But then here it's not only referred to hand, but then it's giving a limit as well. فَاغْسِلُوا وَجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, up to your elbows. Up to your elbows. Ilah here, the main, I finish the verse, then I'll give you the dispute here amongst the ulama and the scholars, that what the Ahnaf and the Shawafi, that what they differ in when it comes to this issue here, and why there is a difference of opinion and difference of practice amongst the schools of thought. So وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, to the elbows, وَامْسَحُوا, and do masha. Number 3. So the first two faraid are proven here of washing of the hands, the face and the hands. Then the next is not faghsilu, but is wamsahu, do masha of your biru'usikum, of your heads. Ras is head, ru'usikum is jama, your heads. Do masha of your heads. Wa arjulakum, and of your feet. Ilal ka'bain, to your ankles.
So it was from ayat 6 to...
That was ayat 6, Surah Ma'idah. Surah 5 is Surah Ma'idah, and then verse number 6. Yeah. So basically, this verse of the Holy Quran here, this is giving the dalalat, the proof from the nusus qat'iyya of the Holy Quran, from the explicit text of the Holy Quran, that what are the fard, the fara'id of wudu, which Allah has made compulsory and has ordered. Because in every action here, where it's mentioned as faghsilu and wamsahu, these are all amr. Amr means an order of Allah, that you must, when you intend to pray, then when you intend to make prayer, then you must do this. You must do these 4 actions. Now, so the first point which we have gathered from here is that these 4 fara'id of wudu, these are proven from the nusus of the nas of the Holy Quran, the text of the Holy Quran. Now, the point here is, the first point, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha qumtum ila as-salati faghsilu wujuhakum wa aydiyakum ila al-marafiq. That those of you who believe, when you intend to pray, then wash your faces and your hands to the elbows. In the Ibarat of Quduri, which is the next book after Idah, it is mentioned there by Imam Quduri that al-mirfiqan wal-qa'banu tadkhulani fi fard al-ghusl inda ulama'una thalasa wa khilaf li-zufr wa shafi'i. That the elbows and the ankles are included in the fard of wudu. They are included in the fard of wudu according to Ulama Thalasa, or according to our 3 Imams. Our 3 Imams are who? Imam Azam Abu Hanifa, N.A.Y.A ibn Sabit RadhiAllah ta'ala Anho, and the Sahiban, Imam Qadi Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad bin Hassan Shaybani. These are the Sahiban who were the 2 closest students of Imam Azam Abu Hanifa RadhiAllah ta'ala Anho, and Imam Muhammad bin Hassan. He was the teacher of Imam Shafi'i RadhiAllah ta'ala Anhu as well. He was a student of Imam Azam Abu Hanifa. These 3 are our Imams, or they call the ulama, our ulama'una. When you say our in the ibarat of the fuqaha, when they mention indana, according to us, that refers to us ahnaf. They don't say ulama'una, our scholars. When they mention in specific, thalasa, the 3 refer to Imam Azam Abu Hanifa and the Sahiban, these 2 Imams. So they mention that according to our 3 Imams, so meaning according to us, the ahnaf, the Hanafis, the washing of elbows and the washing of ankles, they are included in the fard of wudu. Whereas according to Imam Shafi'i radiyallahu ta'ala an, and according to Imam Zufar, they are not included. Why? The whole dispute and the whole ikhtilaf, the whole difference of opinion is upon one word, and that word is ilah. Ilah here, which is mentioned here, that فَغْسِلُوا وَجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. This ilah here which comes in the Quran, the dispute is with this ilah. This issue of this dispute is not mentioned in Idah. It comes into Quduri. But for you to understand, I'm mentioning to you that the dispute is, so you know that the ilah here literally means up to or to. For example, if you read the Shara Amil, which refers to the 100 reasons why a word can change, the different hurufs which cause a word to change. And in the first chapter of that come the huruf-e-jara, those hurufs which give jar to the following word, like fi fil bayti, known as al-baytu with fil bayti, and ila is also a huruf jar. Now these hurufs, they have a meaning behind them as well. They have a meaning that what they refer to. For example, this ba, which is the first huruf of the huruf jara in Sharam Amil, this ba has 9 types. The ba can mean 9 different things. In Bismillah, it means something else. The ba in Bismillah refers to the istimdad, that we begin with the help of the name of Allah. That's what ba means. Little letter ba means we begin with the help of the name of Allah. That ba means that, for example, you say something else, that he was traveling with the horse. Ba can be used there as well. That means ba'ul ilsaq. Ilsaq means to join. Just like that, ilah here, one meaning of ilah is intiha'ul ghaya. Intiha'ul ghaya, and the meaning is given is sirtu min al-basarati ila al-kufati. Sirtu min al-basarati ila al-kufa. That I traveled from Basra to Kufa. Ilah is mentioned here too. Example will be given here is that I traveled from Coventry to Leicester. Ilah is mentioned here now. So Imam Shafi RadhiAllah ta'ala, and they give the example here that this ilah here that is in this ayat is the same ilah which is mentioned in the verse of the Holy Quran, which is what? The atimmu siyama ila al-layl, that do some fast until the night. Now when you fast, soon as night begins, you have to open your fast. The Quran is saying ila al-layl, up to the night. To the night you must fast. So soon as night comes, a person must break his fast. He must, otherwise become makruh. He must open his fast at that time. So Imam Shafi is saying that here ilah here refers up to. So why do you include the elbows? So if you refer the same ilah here, then that means you fast including the night, whereas you have to fast up to the night. So ilah here again refers in this ayat up to the elbow. So why are you washing including the elbows? That's Imam Shafi radhiyallahu anhu. That's his argument, and it's just as well is right. That's their ijtihad. Imam Azam radhiyallahu ta'ala an, their ijtihad was that when we say that I am going to Leicester, does that mean that I will travel up to the border of Leicester or into Leicester? Leicester is included in that ilah. So when we say up to the elbow, that means stop at the elbow, but it means including the elbow. That's Imam Sahib's view. So both of the Imams, they have the difference of opinion, but both are justified. That's the reason why I gave this example, was to know the example that how these ulama differ on what issues. Because how some people make an issue here is like, for example, the ghair muqallid. They say that you call yourself Sunni, then you call yourself Hanafi, Shafi, Qadri, Naqshbandi, Chishti, and they give these all as, they regard these all to be different sects. Because why? They assume that this is a difference of aqaid, whereas it's not a difference of usul, it's a difference of in furu'at. But they give different titles, and they say that these are different sects. Whereas in reality, Naqshbandi, Qadri, Chishti, Sohrawardi, Shadli, Yusuf, Rafai or Avasi, these are all streams. Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali, these are all streams, and they all lead back to the ocean of the Sunnah wal Jama'ah. That's the ocean, and these are all streams that come off. Streams, not sects. These are streams which all lead you back to the ocean, which is the Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And this is how the Imams differed upon issues. For example, now if somebody in usul, if somebody differs, if somebody rejects an usul, a principle of faith, then that person is out of the fold of Islam. But in these issues which are furu'at, for example, if somebody follows the Shafi'i madhab and he washes up to the elbow, he's justified, what he's doing is justified. And if somebody who's a Hanafi like us from the Ahnaf and he washes including the elbows, it is also justified as well. So that difference is justified, whereas in usul difference can't be justified, but in this issue it can. So on the issue of ilah here, the first difference in this ayah comes here, that because of this huruf of ilah, upon this the I.M.R.A differ. Imam Abu Hanifa and his madhab, and Imam Shafi and the Shawafi, this is where their madhab differed on this issue first in this verse of wudu. Whereas us who follow the Ahnaf madhab, our is that the elbows and the ankles are included in the washing when it comes to wudu, in the compulsion, in the compulsory part of wudu, they are included. So this is the first ikhtilaf which they have. The second, in the same ayat they have Imam Shafi and Imam Hanifa, is that on the issue of wamsahu bi ru'usikum wa arjulakum ila al-ka'bayn. The ayah says that do masha of your head. Do masha of your head. Wa arjulakum ila al-ka'bayn, and your feet up to the ankles, including the ankles. So Imam Shafi states here is that this hukam of wamsahu comes before the head, and after this no other hukam is mentioned. All it says is wa arjulakum, and the feet, including the ankles. So that means the feet should not be washed, but the masha has to be done on the feet. The feet only have to be wiped. Masha, they do not have to be washed. Whereas ours, according to us, feet have to be washed in order for the wudu to be complete. They can't be wiped. Masha can only be done of the head and not of the feet. Imam Shafi's argument is that reason being here is that one is that no other hukum was given after masha of the head. Second thing here is that this wa which comes in between, wamsahu bi ru'usikum wa arjulakum ila al-ka'bayn. This wa is the waw of ma'tuf alay, which is that it carries the hukam of what comes before the waw. It carries the hukam, the ruling of what comes before, and it establishes it to what comes after the waw. It establishes the same rule. Yeah. For example, if I say came to me Zaid and Amr, that waw there means that both Zaid and Amr both came to me. It establishes the same, what came before and what came after, it refers to both. So here the masha here refers to the head and the feet. The Ahnaf have stated that the rule of waw in matuf alay is correct. The rule does exist and we follow that. But not only does the rule continue, but also the grammatical issue, the harakat which come under what comes before the waw, also continue with what comes after as well. What continues with what comes after. Whereas wamsahu bi ru'usikum and arjulakum, they don't come under the same grammatical issue here. So this waw in between is not of matuf and matuf alayh. Whereas arjulakum comes under the same grammatical issue of faghsilu wujuhakum and aydiyakum and arjulakum. These three refer to faghsilu, whereas wamsahu only refers to bi ru'usikum, only to that. Because this ba is of this ba here is jar bi ru'usikum, then wa arjulakum will be wa arjulikum. The same rule would apply to that as well, but that is not possible. So therefore the washing of the feet is a fard of wudu and not wiping of it. So these are the fard of wudu, in short the fara'id, which are proven from the nas of the Holy Quran. The text in this verse here in Surah I.M.R.A, verse number 6, that is proven. Moving on now, further, are there any questions in relation to that?
So from my understanding is that when you've now got these leather socks on, basically you should be taking them off and making full washes of the feet.
With the leather socks, the issue with leather socks is different.
Okay.
Because what happens with the leather socks is the whole purpose of the khuffain, the masha al-khuffain. The whole chapter comes here afterwards and we'll go into that in detail. In short, what it means here by masha al-khuffain here is that the leather socks, is a sort of facility which has been provided to Muslims. For that person, the ruling is that a person who is not a traveller, who is a muqim, who is a resident, for him the leather socks lasts 1 day, 1 night. For 1 day and 1 night, that person, he does his wudu, he places his leather sock on top. For 1 day and 1 night, his feet which are inside the socks, they are pure from any impurity. If his wudu was to break, he would only do masha on top of the leather sock. With 3 fingers he would place over the top of the leather socks. That would suffice as if he was to wash his feet. For a traveller, for a musafir, the duration for leather socks is 3 days and 3 nights. For a traveller, that when a person is travelling, he has that facility, but that Allah has given him in the Quran, that he can do wudu, place his leather socks on, and for 3 days and 3 nights, if his wudu was to break, he can do masha over them leather socks, and that would suffice and be enough as if he was to wash his feet for 3 days and 3 nights for leather socks. So leather socks is it comes later on, same chapter, it comes in the purification about leather socks and the duration and how it works. But in short, what it is, the leather socks can only be put on then. For example, if a person was to wash his feet, a Hanafi, and he was to wash them up to the ankles, and he to put the leather socks on, they would have no value. Only when he washes his feet according to this verse and puts the leather sock on, only then it will be counted as a leather sock. Only then it will suffice and be enough for him to be regarded as a sort of substitute for washing of the feet. Of the fagsilu would become wamsahu, but the fagsilu here is upon arjulakum, upon the feet, whereas the masha is not upon the feet, is upon the khuffain, which are the leather socks. So the masha is done upon the leather sock, not upon the feet. So any other questions in relation to that? Yeah.
Why leather?
No, because generally the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith has the Ali al-Murtaza radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the narration from them, that leather is that sort of material which was the Prophet ﷺ and the fuqaha of that time, Sahaba Ikram, regarded to be strong, that no impurity or water would come into it, would travel through that leather. Because the whole purpose is that when you have leather sock on, then that sock, it is a protection for no impurity to enter in and touch your feet. If your wudu was to break, you can do masa on top of the leather sock. But the whole point is that nothing will come in. So that's why leather is that material which was regarded to be of that strength that it would not let any water or impurity enter into it to touch the feet. That's why leather was chosen. And if the fuqaha state that if any water does enter into the leather sock, or a hole is created more than a certain size where impurity can get into it, then that is broken. That is not regarded as a leather sock, and his masa is broken as well. He has to repeat his wudu again and wear something else, a proper leather sock. So that's why leather was chosen. Yeah, anything else? Yes.
Sorry, I missed on the mas'ah there. Can you just go through that again, please?
The masa issue is 1/4 of the head, which is fard, that is compulsory, and anything more than that is sunnat and mustahab, which will come out later on. But 1/4 of the head is what is regarded as a rub or ras. 1/4 of the head is what is compulsory in the fard of wudu, to do masa 1/4 of the head. Masa means to wipe 1/4 of the head. Carrying on from where we were before, so basically these are the 4 fard of wudu. And here again is mentioned, one more point here is that the sabab wa sababuhu istibahatu ma la yuhillu illa bihi wa huwa hukmuhu dunyawiyyu hukmuhu wal ukhrawiyyu as-sawabu fil akhirati. That the whole purpose of wudu is that those things which were haram upon you before the wudu, they become halal after. Like for example, without wudu, in namaz you can't read. With that, namaz becomes okay for you to read. Prayer. Yeah, and other things as well. So the purpose of wudu is that those things which were haram upon you before wudu, by doing it they become halal. That is the worldly benefits. And the benefits of the hereafter are that by doing the wudu you attain sawab, which will benefit you in the hereafter. And that's in short what is mentioned here. وَشَرْطُ وُجُوبِهِ الْأَقْلُ. That what are the conditions now? The shara'it, the conditions in order for wudu to be done for a person. What are his conditions in order for him to do wudu? The first is aql. Aql means he must be sane. He must be sane. Aql. He must be aqil. Sane. Wal bulugh, he must be baligh, mature. For example, now a child, when namaz is not compulsory upon him, wudu won't be as well. When a child is immature, he's not baligh yet. Because the whole purpose here is of wudu, main purpose here is that the Prophet ﷺ said that miftahul jannah as-salah wa miftahul salat tuhur, that the key to paradise is prayer, and the key to prayer is wudu, purification. At-tuhur, the word is mentioned here, at-tuhur literally means purification, but at-tuhuru ba ma'na wudu. That wudu here, of doing wudu, the ablution. That is the key to prayer. So prayer will only become compulsory upon a person when he is baligh. So wudu will only become upon that person when he is baligh as well. Because until a child does not reach the age of maturity, namaz is not compulsory upon him. So how could he attain that key to that prayer which is not even compulsory upon him? So therefore that key of wudu will only come upon that person, incumbent upon him, when he reaches the age of maturity and he is baligh, mature, not yet.
Sorry, for example, you know, my little cousin and that sister, they pray Quran at home. Obviously now they're not hit that age, so do they still have to do wuzu?
No, they still have to do wudu in the sense that generally for the Quran states is a hukam that do not touch, wala, you must do not even touch until you are pure. So for anybody to touch the Quran, he must be pure before he touches it. For a child, because a child until he reaches the age of puberty, he is regarded as in the state of fitra. Fitra means a pure state. So a child still, you must make him do wudu and make sure that he is pure from any sort of major impurity or any sort of impurity before he touches the Quran. That is amongst the adab, the respects of the Holy Quran. But for example, if a child was to touch the Quran unknowingly without wudu, or if he was to touch it because he never knew that is the Quran or anything, he will not be sinned. Whereas if a normal person was to touch it deliberately without wudu, then he is a sinner. There are some people today, they regard it not to be compulsory to do wudu or to be pure when you touch the Quran. Some people regard that to be today, the ghair muqallid people, that they regard it that it's not necessary to touch the Quran with wudu, you can touch it without as well. That is completely not the case. All the ulama unanimously agree in order for the Quran to be touched, and not only to be touched, to look at the Quran and read it. For example, if I'm not touching the Quran, for me to look and read it, I must have wudu as well. I can't even look at the Quran and read it without wudu. What you're allowed to do is, the Quran that you know by heart, by memory, that a person can recite without wudu. Still, it is preferable for him to read with wudu, but he can recite it without wudu. The fuqaha have allowed that. Whereas when a person is in the state of major impurity, for example after intercourse or after a wet dream, or for a woman who's on her periods, or for a woman who's in her post-birth blood, her nifas, for such a person to even read the Quran by memory is not allowed, because he is in a state of major impurity. The only thing he can read is zikr and azkar, short parts of ayats, but not complete verses. Parts of it he can read, like SubhanAllah he can read. That's a part of a verse, but not the full part of it.
I can't remember who, but I was told that, you know, on your smartphones, if you haven't got wuzu, you're okay when you touch that. Is that true?
The smartphone, because it's actually the phone, isn't it? So you're touching the phone, so that's okay. But again, when the Quran is in front of you, even if it's on the smartphone, the verses are there. Them verses cannot be seen and read without wuzu, because you're still reading the verses of the Quran.
Okay.
You see what I mean? So until the verse when it's written and in front of you, then you can't read that without it, you being in a state of purification. And just like that, you can't even touch it. The Sufiyah have stated the reason behind that is what? That it is understandable that you touch the Quran, you need purity for that. But to look and read without touching, why do you need wudu for that? They state that one is the touching of your hands on the Quran. But the letters of the Quran are so pure that your eyes cannot even look at it without purity. That the eyes of a person, that cannot link with the Quran without purification. That a person must be pure for that.
Arabic language only.
That is Arabic language. Though that is different upon opinion, the modern scholars they differ upon that, because the Quran was only translated approximately, say, nearly 700-800 years from today into Persian first, and then later it came into the Urdu language, Hindi, and so now in English. So the scholars still say that even when the Quran is in translation, though it is not the actual Quran, so the same rule don't apply. But the scholars still say that it is preferable and best for a person to avoid touching the Quran when he's not in a state of purity. Because at the end of the day, it is still associated with the Quran. That is a translation of the Tarjamatul Quran. So it has got nisbat with the Quran, so therefore it applies to that as well.
Something that I've discovered in the masjid is that when children are being taught the ulamas, they tend to have a pen or something, and you can tell that they haven't got wudu, that's why they're not touching the Quran, but the ulamas are pointing. The ulamas don't have wudu, you can tell straight away because they're not touching the Quran at all. And they point with their pen, and they are actually reciting?
Well, whether you're an alim or whether you're a Noor person or whether you're a qari or a hafiz, the rule applies. If a person, he should know that very well, that even if he's touching with a pen, he's not touching it himself. But if he's reading it, then he's doing wrong, just as bad as touching it. And in fact, some scholars have said that if you hold something like this and you touch it like that on the Quran like that, then what normally happens is, for example, now just say if I was to move the Quran now, if this is the Quran and I want you to move this, yeah, if I use my bare hand and move it without wudu, that's a sin. If I, for example, have a cloth like this, if I do this and then I move it, that's still not allowed, because that cloth is on me, part of my clothing, and I'm using that to move the Quran. That's not allowed as well. The only thing which you can allow to move it is when you have a separate piece of cloth which is pure, which is not part of your clothing and not touched with the Quran, then you use to pick it up with that, that's allowed. So when you have to move the Quran without wudu, that's how you would do it. Then you'd have a different piece of cloth which is pure, which is not on your clothing, not part of your own clothing, and you could use that. So that the ghilaf of the Quran, the ghilaf, that is okay, because that's not directly connected with the Quran. So that's why they have a ghilaf around it. So with a ghilaf on it, you can move the Quran. But even though, for example, now the page, the front cover of the Quran, there might not be no ayat written on that. There might not be no text written on that. But because it is connected with the pages of the Quran, that is classified and has given the same respect and order of the Quran. So even the cover of the Quran cannot be touched without wudu. So if somebody does do funny maneuvers like that, then that's his own problem, then he should be aware of that. They don't have to do anything like that.
Juzdan, the covering that the kids use to carry the Quran in, what's the application there then?
The covering, like for example the ghilaf of around the Quran, that's fine because that's not stitched to the Quran. Yeah, some you see, some they actually stitch as in they make a pages by page. That won't be allowed. You can't touch that because that's then connected with the Quran. But if it's something separate and you just put it like in a pocket or a bag or something like that, then that's something different. Then that is allowed to touch that.
Sorry, just won't take too much time. One more thing regarding the Quran. You know the zipping. Have you seen some of these Qurans? They have outer cover with zip on it. How is that different to? Is it the same application?
If that zipped cover of the Quran, if that's stitched to the Quran from the inside, from here, this part here, if that part of the Quran is stitched onto the zip cover, then the same rule applies to that. That can't be touched. If the zipping is a complete separate thing, that for example, if you zip all of it, the Quran would come out and there will be two separate things, and then when it's applied to it, then you can't touch it without wudu. But if it's attached to it, then it can't be.
So literally sewn or stuck on.
Sewn or stuck together. So because if it's sewn or stuck on, then it gives the same application as the front cover. Whereas the front cover has got nothing written on it, but it's attached to it, it's got the same ruling according to that.
Well, this may be funny, sounds funny, but in this, you've got the Holy Book of Allah, haven't you? Yeah, so is that the covering?
The smartphone, because the actual is a phone, is a phone, so that's why you won't be able to apply the same thing to that.
Okay.
But the actual text, when you open the Quran up inside it, then you cannot read that text without wudu.
So if you open the text up?
Yeah, when the text is open in front of you, the Quran, so Surah Fatiha, then you cannot look and read that without wudu.
Can I just, one more thing, regarding the phone issue. For argument's sake, people these days, they tend to have adhan and things like that. For argument's sake, if this phone is kept in your pocket, and now, obviously, you have to do number one, you go into the bathroom, and it's in your pocket. The adhan is that the correct method to have the adhan on the phone or not?
Personally, myself, that in your phone, you should try to avoid having anything like that. Yeah? But because obviously, if it's in your phone now, and as long as you don't use it as a ringtone, because if you have a ringtone, then sometimes some people have the verses of the Quran as ringtones, then if, for example, halfway through a verse, you pick the phone up, that cuts half the verse and gives a different meaning. So then that could be a sin. So therefore you should avoid doing that. Otherwise, if it's in the phone, it's debatable by the person's own taqwa, it comes down, there's no specific ruling that can say is haram or is halal. But it's a person's own taqwa, your own piety, that what you think. Personally, myself, I've got nothing like that in my phone. So that's why I wouldn't. But somebody else, if they have, as long as it's not a ringtone, as long as it's not going to come on whilst they're in such places, then if they have it stored in there, that's fine. And if they use that, for example, at the end of the day, that person has got it stored in there for a reason, isn't it? He listens to the Quran, he listens to Naat, he receives reward, he might be memorizing it. So therefore, to delete it away, that could cause damage to the person. Like he might be, the link he has with the Quran, that link might be broken as well. So we shouldn't be too strict on that. But as in general, I wouldn't, but somebody else does, as long as you don't have it as a ringtone, I think it'll be allowed. Anyway, moving on. So basically, that point then, in relation to the wudu part, and what are the fard of wudu, and then the conditions. The first condition we said was to be sane. The second is bulugh, to be baligh, to be mature. And in relation to the age of maturity, nobody's asked this question yet, but though you should have, but I'll answer anyway. That what is the age of maturity? When does a person become baligh?
15.
That's
Male
one
is 12, is it? And female is 9.
I'll give you the reasoning. What the answer to that is. There's I've written a short answer to that recently. The Seeker's Pact is like a online question sort of bank where they ask questions. And one of the people on there that I answered the question as well. And this question was posed in relation to what is the age for a girl and boy to become baligh. The fuqaha, the first thing that they have stated is that before they mention age, they mention signs, indications. That what are the indications for a person to become baligh? The first indications are that for a woman, when she begins her menstruation cycle, when she begins it, even if she begins it at an early age or a later age, that is the age when she becomes baligh, she becomes mature. For a man, that when he, for example, has a wet dream, and for him that becomes a first indication for him that he has reached the age of maturity. If nothing like that happens, the qawls differ. Some say for a woman age of 9, 10, for a boy 12. But unanimously the agreement is at the age of 15, if no indications turn up until that age, when they come to the age of 15, automatically they'll be regarded as mature. And that's in short, in RadhiAllah, Mukhtar, even in Maraki al-Falah, the Shara of Noor, Idah, which I've got here, and written by Imam ShurunBulali himself, the Shara on it, and other things. So basically that's what an age for a baligh person is. So what I'm stating here is that for a person that wudu is compulsory upon him, or for him to do, is that the first condition is that he must be sane. Sane meaning he must know that what he's doing. If he does not know what wudu is, what the purpose is, what the reasoning is, why we are doing it, then he does not have to do it. And when he knows and he's in that state of sanity, then for him, for a baligh person, mature, well, Islam, of course, he must be Muslim. There's a third condition, that he must be a Muslim in order for wudu, for him to establish that. Then after that, so Aqil, Baligh, Muslim again, because why the ayat refers to Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, that all you who believe when you intend to pray salah. So that means only for the believer this refers to here. That there is enough water for him to do wudu, then he must do wudu. What it means by this is, the ruling here is that, for example, if a person has a small amount of water which is only enough for him to drink, then he does not have to do wudu, he could do tayammum instead. So the condition is when there is enough amount of water and it is accessible, because the other condition accessible as well, that for example if a person, there's 5 miles down the road, there's a massive well of water, but the Shariat states that when 1 mile radius, if water is not available in 1 mile radius, then a person can do tayammum. Yeah, the tayammum will come after, but what it means by this point here, that he must have qudrat upon istimal of the water. The water is there for him to use, and enough for him to use. That if there's only a small amount for him to do to drink, then the drinking has priority, and wudu can be substituted by tayammum. That's the next condition.
And that would be basically enough water to do the 4 farais.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay.
And not only the 4 farais, for example, if he has enough water there to do 4 farais, by completing that, he won't have nothing left to drink. So enough for him to complete his wudu and enough for him to drink as well, when needed, that would be enough, regarded as enough, suffice as enough. And when there is hadath, meaning when there is a need for him to do wudu. For example, if somebody, he has wudu already, he can still do it, Because wudu upon wudu is sunnat, is mustahab, you will receive reward for that. But he's not obliged to do that, because there is no need for him to do it. But when his wudu is broken, he does not have wudu, then he is in a need, in a state where he must do wudu in order for him to pray. So when he's in such a state where wudu is obliged for him to do, that is a condition for him to do wudu then, in such a state. Yep. Next, that when a woman is not in the state of period or post-birth blood. So when she's not in that state, then wudu she can do as well.
So is that 6 points?
That's the next point here.
Is that 6 altogether?
That's 6 then, yeah. The numbers are not mentioned there, but you can keep the numbers.
It's about 6.
Yeah. Next point here is وَضِيقُ الْوَقْتِ, and the time is not tight. He's not short of time. Before that is done, one point you got to remember is that what does it mean by this? What does it mean by this? You probably not heard this before, this masala. That what it means by this is short of time. You know what they call tangiya waqt. Yeah. That in the Shariat, a man, he's going to pray his namaz by Jamaat. Namaz is about to begin, Jamaat is about to stand. He hasn't done wuzu yet. If he's got fear that by me doing wuzu I might miss the Jamaat, can he do the Tayammum?
I think so, yeah.
He can't.
No.
He can't do Tayammum. He can't. Because why? For the fard namaz, Jamaat is not a compulsion. It is wajib, it is sunnah. Wuzu is farz. So he can't substitute one wuzu for a sunnah or for a wajib. So he will still have to do wudu and pray namaz on his own after. For example, now a person was to go to pray his Jummah namaz on Friday, and now he goes there without wuzu. And by him doing wuzu, he fears that my Jummah will finish, the Jamaat will finish. Can he do Tayammum?
Yes, because it's not repeatable namaz.
It is, because he can read Zuhr instead.
Yeah.
So there is a substitute. So he can still do wuzu and he misses Jummah and he can do Zuhr. Because Jummah is fard, but it is regarded as wajib, necessary. Because the Zuhr is fard, wajib, the Jummah is a substitute for that. But he can make up by doing Zuhr. So he still has to do wudu. If a person is going towards his Eid namaz and he feels that by me doing wudu I will miss my Eid namaz, then
Wudu is first and his wajib is
then he can.
I think then he can.
Because for
I'm going to say that.
Eid namaz there is no substitute.
Should have said it then.
once Eid namaz is finished, you can't read it again. It's done for the day. Yeah. For example, unless there's 2 or 3 Jamaats, then obviously you can read the next, second, third, or fourth. For example, if he's in the last Jamaat, and now he about to miss, and he either does Tayammum and reads, or if there's wuzu he misses, then he can do Tayammum there, and he can read his namaz by Jamaat for Eid. Just like that, if he was to go to a Janazah prayer, and if he is by me doing wudu I will miss the Janazah prayer, in that state he can also do Tayammum and pray the Janazah.
Subhanallah.
Because for Janazah there's no repeat for that as well. Once it's read, it's read. So what it means here by the shortage of time, that when a person is in that time, that he does not have shortage of time here. That he does not have shortage of time, meaning that when he has open time, then wudu is fine for him to do. But when time gets short for him in the situation of Eid and Janazah, then wudu is not compulsory upon him, he can do Tayammum and read. That's what it means by that point.
But in that Tayammum, can you use it to pray others namaz too?
No, you can't.
So you have to
Soon as that namaz is read and finished, then his Tayammum finishes with that as well. Now for the next namaz, whatever he reads, he needs to do wudu for that again. So it only refers to them namaz because though Eid is wajib, it is compulsory upon a person, that in that situation to make up a wajib, because wudu has a substitute of Tayammum, a person can use a substitute to perform that wajib. And whereas janazah is fard kifaya, because fard is of 2 types, fard ayn and fard kifaya. Fard is of 2 types. You have Fard Ain and Fard Kifaya. The terminologies and categories will come to later on, but in general for you to know that Fard is of two types, Fard Ain and Fard Kifaya. Fard Ain is that Fard which under no circumstance, in any situation can that be missed, like prayer or other things like that. Fard Kifaya is that Fard that if a person is not able to, he can miss that. Like, for example, Janazah prayer. If there's 5 of you live in one household or in a village, and Janazah happens in another village, if one person from that area, from that village goes to perform the Janazah, everybody else in that area has been exempt of that Fard.
Subhanallah.
That's Fard Kifaya. Because by one person going, all of them, their obligation has been done. If no one goes, then they'll all be sinful. If one goes, they all will. And just like that, for example, searching knowledge. The Prophet says, Talabul ilmi faridatun ala kulli muslimin wa muslimat. The search of knowledge is compulsory, fard upon every Muslim, male and female. Now, if a person, he has the health, he has the facility to learn knowledge, that's fard, he can't miss that. But if a person is not able to, what can he do? If a person lives in North Pole, there's no one there for him to learn knowledge, there's nowhere for him to learn it from, then he's exempt from that rule. Allah will not punish him for missing a fard. So there comes under Fard Kifaya. Fard Ain are those where they cannot, there's no sort of loophole for Fard Ain. And just like that, in this here, Fard Kifaya is Janazah namaz. Janazah comes under Fard Kifaya. That if one person goes to perform it, then it is as if everyone has performed it. If no one goes, then they're all sinful. Same thing applies to when you do i'tikaf in Ramadan. Though that come under Fard, they come under Sunnat al-Mu'akkidah to do i'tikaf. But for example, now in the area where you live, in that area, if nobody performs i'tikaf in that area, then every single person is regarded as a sinner. If one person from that area does i'tikaf, the obligation is lifted upon the whole community. The whole community becomes free from that obligation if one person goes to perform it. And if no one performs it, then they all be regarded as sinners. So the same rule applies there to i'tikaf. So here what we're referring to,
What would be classed as an area?
as an area. Area generally, here, how we regard it here is, mathematically, I can explain to you as well, but that good long area here is, for example, if you live in an area, you know what we call our own area, ilaka. That where your own areas in your own streets, that little sort of part of your area, where, and you've got a mosque prescribed to that area, that is regarded as an area. According to Imam Shafi radhiallahu ta'ala an, that an area is that for a Muslim is in which he must have a alim and he must have a doctor there. An alim and doctor must be in the area where a Muslim lives. It is haram for a person to live in an area where there is no alim and there is no doctor for him. Some people go live very far, they want to go live in posh areas and they go very far out that they don't see no one near them. Yeah, no one because why these two things, alim and doctor? Masjid is not mentioned and other things are not mentioned. Alim and doctor is why? Because if a person falls ill, his health falls ill and there's no one there to cure him as a doctor, then he's put himself at risk. And if a person in his deen falls ill, there's no alim to cure him as well. That's what these two things, Imam Shafi states that these two have to be in an area where a Muslim lives. An alim and a doctor for a person to be in that area. So in this country, even doctor surgeries are 10 miles away, they're still accessible, they're not far. But in your area where you are, generally for a person, i'tikaf, one person goes, the whole area is done from that. And same with janazah as well, same thing there as well. So that was the condition for, so a Haz and Nifas, a woman who's in Haz and Nifas, for her, she must not be in that state, and then, the timing, the time must not be tight upon a person that his janazah or Eid may miss. Okay, that's that denial, the conditions. Now for wudu to be correct, so not referring to actions, that's compulsory parts. In order for wudu to be correct, there is these conditions here. The first one is that the water, whichever part you put it on, the 4 parts which you use water for to purify in the fard, must reach your skin, must touch your skin. That's regarded as washing. So whichever part you wash, you have to make sure that the water touches the skin there. In the washing. In the masha is different. Because wiping some parts, you won't touch the skin, some parts you will. But where is regarded as washing, whatever part has to be washed, it has to be, the water must touch the skin. And if it does, yep.
I know you might come on to it, but what about plasters and stuff like that?
Yeah, more come on to that. Yeah, I'll come on to that. Yeah, so that's, I think, number 2, number 3 comes to that as well. So first thing, so in order for the skin, the water must touch the skin. In order, for example, now, if a person does his wudu on his arm here, he washes them, and he leaves one part of his arm dry, the water did not touch that, then that person, his wudu is not complete. But he's left, what is compulsory is from that point there of your fingertip of the longest finger to the end of your elbow, that must all be washed with water. If one part of that remains dry, his wudu is not complete. Same with his feet up to his ankle or his face. So that's why washing here refers to that the water must touch the skin.
What the bed? Is the bed compulsory as well now?
No, bed of water. Just coming in.
Can I just one more thing, just reiterate on that. When you say the water, for argument's sake, you're washing your hand, you missed a spot. Can you just take extra water and just?
There you can. You have to make sure that during the wudu time, for example, now a person does his wudu and he's finished and he's gone and he's 5 minutes later he's realized, oh, I left that dry. Then he has to repeat his wudu again.
Alright.
Yeah, but whilst he's doing wudu and he's gone to his face, he goes, oh, I left that part. He can wash that again to make sure that part.
Whilst he's doing
Yeah, because he's still in the practice of wudu. And the next condition here is mentioned again in the previous point, that those things which sort of cancel wudu, a person must not be in one of them states. So meaning when a woman is in her period or her post-birth blood, or when a man is in that state where ghusl is wajib upon him, then wudu does not come into condition, is it? So when a person is not in any of them states where ghusl is wajib, then wudu can be done. But if he's in a state where ghusl is necessary upon him, then wudu has got there's nothing in there for a person to do wudu, there's no need for him to do wudu, and he can't as well. A person who's in a state where he needs ghusl, he can do wudu 100 times. That's not regarded as wudu. It'll only be regarded as wudu once he's in a state, because again, comes back to the same point again, we're going to come to afterwards, the 2 types of najasat. The najasat, the hadse akbar and the hadse asghar. The 2 types of hadas. One is the minor impurity, one is the major. Minor are them things which can be overwhelmed by wudu, and the major ones are those that they can only be overtaken by ghusl. That's how they've been divided. So when you're in such a state where ghusl is necessary upon you, then wudu cannot be done. There's no need, this won't be regarded as wudu.
You know, ghusl is first upon you, and in Ramadan, can you do wudu just to keep the roza and then do ghusl before Fajr namaz?
If a person, if for example, when the ghusl is
Yeah, sorry.
in Ramadan, when a person is in the state of, for example, in the night, a person in the state that he needs ghusl, if he wakes up before Sahri, then before Sahri he must do ghusl.
Yeah, if the time is really like.
Even if the time is short,
Okay.
the eating is sunnat, but he being pure and out of the state of major impurity is fard. So that's why he can miss the Sahri, but he has to make sure that he's in a state of impurity. For example, now if a person in the night he comes into a state of impurity, major impurity, through a wet dream or either way, he don't wake up for Sahri, and just say for example he wakes up 7 o'clock in the morning, fast closes at 4, he wakes up at 7. Is that person's fast counted or not?
No.
It is.
Yeah.
He has to wake up at 7 o'clock at that time, do ghusl there and make intention there. If he passes the time where he comes into Zuhr, then and he does not make intention by then his fast does not count. So those people who sleep all night, but if a person, for example, now he makes his intention before he sleeps, when a person goes to sleep at 12, 1 o'clock, and he makes his intention then that I'm going to fast now, and my fast has started now. And some people do that, unfortunately they miss their Fajr namaz as well, they don't wake up for the Fajr. But if somebody wants to do that, and then you sleep, do a 16-hour shift in the sleep, and he wakes up at 3, 4 o'clock, a few hours before the roza opens, his roza is still intact, because he made the intention before. But if a person, because niyat is a condition of fasting, it's fard in fasting to do intention. But if, for example, for a person he does not make intention, and he sleeps through Sahri, and then he wakes up midday. If it's before midday, he can still there and then make his intention. Stop. You can't eat that and make intention, but yes, he can make his intention there, and the fast will be okay. But if he passes midday, so that means midday meaning he's half of his fast has gone. Therefore, the remaining half he can't make intention there. Then he must repeat that. I.M.R.A is necessary for him. So that's how the fasting thing. So you that's you understand that. So a person must not be in that state where ghusl is wajib upon him. Then in that state, a person. So just like that, if the issue of the beard, that if for example the beard is on the person, for example now from here to here is the face and this all here, so there's a beard here, etc. That all comes with the hair underneath, because that's not regarded as the face, is it? So underneath here a person, it is the sunnahs come after what they call khilal. Khilal means you get water in your hand and you run it through your beard. That's the khilal of the beard. But where the beard is on the area of the face, then he has to make sure that the water passes through that hair and touches his skin on that area, which is the face, from chin to where your hairline starts, and from earlobe to earlobe. In that area, wherever a person's hair is, then he has to make sure that the water is properly done in such a way that his face reaches the skin of his face.
Is there a percentage of, because when you've got a beard, to make sure that reaches all parts of the skin? Does it have to be all parts of the skin, or is there a certain percentage?
No, on your face, which is hairline to there and there to there. So whatever comes in that area, then you have to make sure the water touches your skin there. No part can be left dry of that area. But that's fard, isn't it? It's compulsory.
That's when you're washing your face 3 times.
Yeah. So if you've got a teeth washing it 3 times.
Once is fine.
But you say
Once it's fard. If you no, khilal is sunnah.
Okay.
And that's off the beard,
Okay.
not off the skin. Is to wash the beard, that in case there's nothing in the beard which may be impure, for example something gets stuck in your beard or something like that, could be anything. So to make sure that the beard is clean, you do khilal. You run your fingers from your right hand through your beard to make sure that's clean. In relation to the face part where your beard is, you have to make sure that the water, you're not using that water to clean the beard, but you're using it to clean the face. The hair is an obstacle, so you have to make sure that it passes that obstacle and touches your face in order for that to be done. Yeah? And in relation to the plasters, the fuqaha state that anything which obstructs a person from water touching his skin, if for example that what he has on top can be removed and then washed underneath, then he must do that. If by him doing that it will cause damage to his health, it will cause problem, then he can do masah over it. And the issue comes further on about the foot, that if for example on a person's foot he has cream on there, or he has some sort of something on there that he can't wash it. For example, say a person has a cream on his foot now, by washing that cream will come off and that his medication will go away. Then that person, he can get water and he can do masah on his foot. That will be equivalent to washing the foot. So the Shariat is easy, is the yusr is always, the fuqaha have always given the fatwa on yusr, on easiness rather than usr, on being strict. So that's why that issue there, that clarifies that issue there. So that were the conditions of wudu. The next thing is that those things that for a person, again, issue here about beard is mentioned in more in detail, that beard which is thick, you have thin beard, you have thick beard. For example, my beard is thin beard. That's naturally. Some people's beard is thick. So what they call a ghanidari, a thick beard. It is wajib for a person to make sure that he washes that properly, because the beard is thick. So then he must make sure that he washes that properly, that there's nothing, no impurity remaining in that water, in his beard. Just like for example, like a woman that when she has long hair and she does ghusl, how must she wash her hair? That she has to wash her hair in such a way that she is mutma'in, she is affirmed and sure that the water has reached the roots of her hair. If it's reached the roots, you don't need to write that down at this point. That's what the ghusl was telling you to explain. that the water must reach the roots of her hair. If it reaches there, then she knows that her hair has been cleaned. Just like that, for a person who has a thick beard, for someone who's got a thin beard, it's sunnat for him, doing khilal will be enough for him. Khilal. For a person who's got a thick beard, to make sure that he uses properly, to make sure that he cleans his beard to the best way that he's affirmed and sure that, you know, I've done enough, that my beard is clean. Further on now, that when a person washes his face, a question arises here that his lips, what is the necessary in relation to that? That when a person washes his face, the inside of his lips, when the mouth is closed, it is not necessary to wash that. When he does kulli, which is sunnat, that will be enough. But if you don't do kulli, his wudu will be counted. This top part, obviously that's part of the face, but the inside of the lips, when the mouth is closed, that's not wajib to wash that. You make a note of that then.
Yeah. There's some people, they wash the face and they take in the lips and they shut the eyes really hard, so the water doesn't get like to these places, and they just do this and they stick it on.
Yeah, but that's fine, because the inside of the lips, they don't have to be washed. And as far as the eyes are concerned, that when a person closes the eyes, as long as the person is sure that his face is enough, and it'll be impossible to keep your eyes open, I think.
No, I mean, they squint hard.
Even if they squint hard, so they shouldn't try to do that too much, because and if a person by doing that, if he feels that some part of his is being left dry, then he's not completely wudu. But in such a way that he can do it, that he can make sure that, you know, enough is done, that myself have been cleaned, that'll be enough. That reminded me of when I used to be studying. There was one person in my class, and he used to, like, you know, come out with these sorts of friends. And he used to go, which one of you can sneeze with your eyes open? Like, I need you to try that. Throwing water in your face with your eyes open. And if, for example, if a person's fingers, you know, when women, when they, you know, atta, when they guni the atta, now atta is pure in it, yeah, atta flour, yeah, when they make roti, and you know, after they've done it, then you know the atta, it remains on the fingers, don't it, sometimes. So if a woman was to do wudu after that, first she must make sure that she cleans her hands from all of that, then she does wudu after that, because anything such as that can stop the water touching the skin. So therefore, even atta is pure, but she still has to make sure that she purifies that first and then does wudu after.
Now, for example, if you're a car mechanic and you get oil all the time, or if you're a teacher like me and my friend here, sometimes we get marker pen on, you know, from the board mark. Sometimes we get the ink, sometimes leaves. It remains on there.
The ink, the scholars have stated that because that don't come on top of the skin, as in that it obstructs water going. Though some have said that the ink on top, it does obstruct water touching the skin, but majority of them said that it don't. It's not obstruction, but it actually comes part of the skin.
Okay.
So you can still wash on top of that. It'll be okay.
What about car mechanics with oil?
Car mechanics with oil, you have to stop. Here, oil is mentioned as well. Because if you realize, you know, scientifically, if you put oil and water mixed, they'll separate. The water and oil will depart from one another. One will rise on top of the other. I think it's the oil that rises, and the water stays at the bottom. So that shows that water, where oil is, water can't penetrate through it. So when you've got oil on your body, then water won't penetrate through it to get to your skin.
And then it's sunnah to do gardening. Well, there's a lot of people in our community who eat pan, don't they?
Pan. You know, pan issue will come down to us. Remember the pan.
One more thing. You know, for Wudu, somebody's asleep. He wakes up from a long sleep. Now, obviously, he's going to pray. He needs to do wudu. Does he need to wash his face first and then make niyyah for wudu, or just
The Prophet said that when a person wakes up from sleep, the first thing he must do is wash his hands. Before he does wudu, a person must wash his hands first. Is just not part of the wudu. Separately, he must wash his hands, because while he's asleep, he don't know where his hands have been. They could have touched something, like his private parts, which might be impure, and that might have deemed his hands to be impure, then if he uses them hands which are impure to do wudu, his wudu will not count. So therefore, it is sunnah that when a person wakes up from his sleep, it is sunnah to wash his hands first, before touching any utensils, before touching any clothes, or before doing wudu. Washing the face, that's okay to wake yourself up. But even when you do wudu, that will be enough to wake yourself up. So the hands is maintenance. It's not fard, but it is sunnah to wash your hands. Some scholars say it's wajib.
You know, oil in the beard. Now you said that oil and water obviously doesn't separate. So how do you wash? Like, obviously, would you rub it?
Oil in the beard is different, because that oil which we use in the beard, the zaytun oil, that because the Prophet himself used that, so nobody can put a hukum on that. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran has said wattini wa zaytun, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has picked an oath of that oil, and the Prophet used to use it in his own beard and in his own hair, and he said to people that I like people to use it as well, like I use it, and Allah liked it so much that Allah mentioned it in the Quran, and to the extent that the scholars have written that when the Prophet used to put oil in his hair or in his beard, and even the oil used to drip off, when the oil used to be, you touched the beard of the Prophet, it used to drop off, it stood like a shooting star. That's how much beauty that drop of oil had when it used to come off from the head of the Prophet. So that oil is something different, because that's the Prophet's own, what he did, so nobody can say that's wrong. But the oil, what the brother was speaking about, that's that oil there from where you buy from the car places and petrol stations and all that stuff. That's completely different.
Before you make the intention of doing the dua, people say that the toilet cubicle, that you can't say Allah's name, as in
basically what it is that what they states is that a person, when he goes to the toilet, before he enters he should read the dua, when he leaves he should read the dua, about the protection from any sort of khaba'ith a person should read before he enters and when he leaves. That is because the adaba, the respect is that where you are in such a place, you should not mention the name of Allah. If a person has to, he can. If a person has to, he can. Because for example, the Prophet said that the jinnat, the jinns, the bad jinns, they stay in dirty places. Dirty places like the toilets. So whenever you go to the toilet, you should wear a hat. You should cover your head when you go to the toilet. Why? Because when they attack through the head. So keep your heads covered when you go to the toilet. And read the dua before you go. Now if you're in the toilet and something comes up, then you have to mention something, you have to read something, whatever it is. So you can't say it, though it is the preferable way, and the way that has been taught to us is that before you enter and after you've left, that's when you should read your dua.
Talk about the wudu.
The wudu. Okay, the wudu dua for wudu, when after you finish the wudu, the dua you do, that dua is regarded as mustahab. It's an adab of wudu. It's mustahab in wudu to read that dua. Yeah, it's not fard. Normally what happens is what should be, because in our homes, the bathrooms, the toilets are in the same place where the sinks are where we do our wudu. Normally we see when we go to wudu khanas in mosques, the toilets are separate, the wudu khana is separate. Meaning the wudu khana is here, the toilets will be behind cubicles. In that place you can't read it. Where we are in our homes, because we don't have that facility, that wudu areas are separate and toilet areas are separate. Though if you go back years ago, if you ask your parents when they first come here 30, 40, 50 years ago, toilets were outside the house in the back garden. Yeah, they used to be separate and the sinks used to be inside. That was better. But obviously because when you got 3 foot snow and you have to go to the back garden, then obviously it become hard then, so that's why the toilets came inside. But otherwise in general, that when you're in such a place, the adab is that you can miss the dua there. It's only mustahab, it's preferred to read it. If you don't read it, there's no guna for it. Yeah.
Brother, sorry, you mentioned about the head covering when you're in the toilet for the shaitan. Now I've got an imama, so do I take it off?
Imama you should take off anything, you could just wear anything to cover your head. It doesn't have to be a hat. You can even put a bandana on your head, you can put anything on your head, as long as your head is covered.
But the imama's got to come off.
The imama, in respect wise, you should take it inside, because the imama is regarded, some of the Prophet said that the imama is a crown for the believer. So something like that you shouldn't really take it to the toilet. I would suggest anyway. So anyway, that's the answer to that. So moving on to the next point. There was a question coming up for whatever it was. What were we talking about before?
Oil.
The oil, yeah. So basically anything that stops you from the atta, sorry, you were talking about, yeah, the atta, that when a woman, she's got atta on her hands, that she has to make sure that cleans up first before she does her wuzu, because then that can obstruct any water getting into her, touching her body parts, and that's wajib for her to do that. And for example, if a person is sweating, a person might assume that by sweat, then that might obstruct water going. That does not. So sweat does not obstruct the water touching the body parts. It was mentioned here as well. And also, your small toe on your foot, because normally the rest of the feet your toes you can move around very easily, and you can make sure the water can get to there. The small toe, if a person feels that the water may have got there, may not have got there, to wash in between, because the whole part has to be washed, isn't it? So to wash in between, it is for that person, he must move that toe and make sure that water has reached that part of the foot as well. That becomes wajib for the person, to make sure that he does that, to make sure the water has got there. And that point comes here again, which I mentioned there, that if there's anything on the foot, like cream or something like that, that by removing it, it can bring damage to that person, then instead he can get some water on his hand and he can do masa on his foot. And that would be enough as if he washed it.
Is washing the toes between feet, the toes in between? I thought that's sunnah.
That's sunnah, because why normally wash your foot?
Yeah.
Water will get there anyway,
Yeah.
because them toes they spread out,
Yeah.
they can't get there. And to do it extra to be sure is
Yeah.
sunnah. But that part of the foot, because it's normally joint, isn't it?
Okay.
So that's why to make sure the water has got there, you should make sure that you try to do that. Make sure. And when a person is in a state of wudu, whilst he's in a state of wudu, if he gets his hair cut, or if he cuts his nails, or if he trims or cuts his moustache, for that person he does not need to repeat his wudu again. His wudu still remains intact. Just make a note of that anyway, because a common question might come up.
So nails,
moustache and haircut. These three things, by cutting them,
whilst
whilst you're in a state of wudu, your wudu does not break.
Right.
Yeah, you should do that whilst you're in a state of wudu.
Do you know if you have, once you cut your nails, there'll be, obviously if they're grown a bit, there might be dirt inside them, so wouldn't that need to be cleaned?
Exactly. So if a person, his nails are extra long, that he feels that, for example, that his nails, that as long as because of how long they are, that nail might obstruct water touching his fingers, then in that case he has to make sure that the water touches his fingers, or he has to cut and wash that part. But if his nails are generally that he feels that there's nothing there which will obstruct, and even for example, a person has dirt in his nail, if it's not a major impurity, it won't break the wuzu or obstruct the wuzu in any way or form. So by cutting it, it still won't break the wuzu. Wuzu should be intact. In the last 5 minutes left, if there's any questions, then we'll finish off.
Okay, we've had a question answer session.
Loads of questions today.
Now, when we do wuzu, when we start off, washing our hands is sunnah. Is that right?
Before, yeah.
Before. But washing our hands with...
That's fard. The sunnah way is that when a person begins his wudu, first what he must do is sunnah way is.
Yeah.
The sunnah, the next chapter we're going to do next time is the sunnah of wudu. That a person, he washes his hands up to his wrist 3 times.
Yeah.
First, because why? Your hands are the main source which you will use to wash everything else. So to make sure that they are clean, that's the first sort of objective. So to wash them 3 times up to the wrist, that is not regarded as the fards of wuzu. That's a sunnat. After you wash them 3 times, to wash from your finger to your elbow is the first fards of wuzu, separate.
What breaks the wuzu?
We'll come on to that. There's so many of them. If I start one here,
You know the masa of the head, you say. Now, we wash our hands 3 times. Every part is washed 3 times. The masa, is it once or?
Masa, washing 3 times again is sunnah.
No.
Washing once, it's not even once or twice or 3. How it normally is that to wash your elbow up to here, for example, I'll give you an example of this now. If you could do it in one and you're sure that your arm is all done in once, that's enough. If it takes 2 to do it, then you have to use 2, 3. Generally, to wash every part of your body 3 times is sunnah. For the head, masha of quarter is fard, but to do masha of the full head is sunnah. Not to repeat 3 times, but to do the full head is sunnat. And then to go beyond the head and to do the back of the neck is mustahab. Is optional but liked to do the back of the neck as well. And then with the back of these hands that you use here to go back, and then you use the back of your fingers to do the neck, and then you use this inside your ears, and then the behind of your ears you use with your thumbs. You have to clean that. That's all mustahab, that part. So the first quarter is fard, the rest of the head is sunnat, then the neck and the ears is mustahab.
So no 3 repetition then? That's
No. We'll do it 3 times masha unnecessarily is disliked. Those that do it, they shouldn't do that.
What's the ruling on washing, and can someone get water in their hand and just chuck it on top of, for example, their arm and rub it?
If, for example, water is in the hand and his hand is pure, and the hand is pure, and now his hand is already completed the washing of that, then he puts water in that and he uses it on his arm, that's fine. But for example, if his hand is impure, as in wudu he's doing, and now he's washed his hand, and he's washed his hand now, one farz is done. That same water that's remaining in there, he uses that on that, then it's wrong, because then it becomes used water. And used water only becomes used when it is used to purify something. Once it's been used to purify, the water remains tahir, but it cannot purify. So that's if the part you've done that already, and you put new water in there, then you use that on top, that's fine. But if you use that water to clean the hand, and what's left in there, then you use that to wash this, and put it on top like that, then it becomes used water, then you can't do that.
Sorry, yeah. So, for example, for something you put the water up your nose, yeah, then you wash your face. Sometimes the water from your nose is still dripping into your hand. So, for example, I've done my 3 up my nose, yeah, sunnah. Then I go to wash my face. Sometimes, when you've got the water in your hand, the water is still dripping from your nose into your hand.
A small amount like that, because you've got a big amount of water in your hand, a small amount does drop into it. It doesn't really make much of a difference. It won't make much of a difference because then things you can't avoid them things. But generally, a person who washes his nose, uses fresh water for his face, that's fine.
You know, if you've got wuzu already and you don't actually remember breaking your wuzu, but you've got a bit of a doubt in your head, someone told me that it's what's up from the shaitan, you don't have to do wuzu again unless you actually remember.
If, for example, the ruling is here, as in the translated about the N.A.Y.A chapter of prayer, that if a person, he gets, I've read namaz now, was read my namaz, I think do I have wuzu or not? It will become that for me. In that case, I must do my wuzu again. If it happens repeatedly, then it's a waswasa. So when it becomes a repetitive issue for those people who every namaz they get that issue, have a have or not, in that case then they can take the have it. It's just a waswasa from the shaitan.
Unless you remember it.
Yeah, unless you remember it. And if it happens like a one-off, then there must be something behind it. In that case you must do your wuzu again.
Well, if you get waswasa over everything, would you leave it?
No, if you get waswasa over, obviously those things in ibadat, for example, same in prayer as well, that if a person is rakat, for example, he's did 4 rakat prayer, when he gets to his 4th, he thinks, have I read 3 or have I read 4? Have I missed one or not? So in that case, when you become in doubt, one-off, then you must be sure and make sure that you read what you read. Yeah.
Wuzu-wise.
But if it becomes repetitive, repeatedly every time you do wuzu, then
I can get waswasa with putla right now.
What?
Over this putla, I get waswasa with everything in it, so
that means you're on the right track.
Then you need Surah Nas, Qulub Nas, and you read it 11 times after every prayer. And before you go to sleep and below it over yourself.
So do I have to repeat my wuzu or just leave it?
Now if it becomes continuous and you inside you think that no, I have, but you're getting a doubt, then it's okay. But if it becomes one-off, then you have to make sure that you do it.
Brother, you said about the namaz, the doubt, the waswasa of the shaitan. For example, it's 4 rakat namaz. The doubt hits him. Have I done 4 or 3? Now, tashud, you go into tashud. Now, you're in doubt. Now, what happens then? Do you do the source of...
If a person feels that he's read 4 out of 4, if a person thinks that he's read 3, then he must repeat the 4th. And if he's basically, what happens is his Guman, whichever way it goes more. If it goes more towards 3, then he must repeat. If it goes more towards 4, then he sticks to 4. After the namaz has finished, if he goes into doubt then, and more towards 3, then he has to repeat the namaz again.
Sorry, on the Mars. Rolling up the trousers.
It's makruh. To roll up,
Which makruh?
to fold any part of the clothing during prayer is makruh tahrima. Is a major makruh tahrima.
Tell the DAs to...
Yeah, is to any folding is regarded as in namaz to folding and increasing of the clothes are not allowed. Is there any more questions? Last question, then we'll go on and then we'll finish. No.
Can we finish now, please?
Yeah, he asked a question.
The Prophet used to say Gufranaka every time.
The Prophet doesn't know?
He used to say Gufranaka every time he used to go out the toilet.
Yeah.
To rub words of Allah. Yeah. So I should used to report.
Yeah. And the Prophet when he used to come out from the toilet to do istighfar.
It's because I prayed that all the time.
بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات الحكيم إنه تعالى جواد كريم ومالك بر الله الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصل عليه ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار يا ربي بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم إلهی بحق بنی فاطمہ کے برق والی ایما کنی خاتمہ اگر دعوتم رد کنی والقبول منو دست دامان آل رسول صلی اللہ تعالی علی حبیب خیر خلقہ سیدنا و مولانا محمد و آلہ و اصحابہ اجمعین برحمتک یا ارحم الراحمین.